Face front, Marvel fans, I'm diving deep into the thrilling season 2 of What If on Disney+. Join me as I compare the show to my experiences with the comic books. What if there's a newly colored Hulk in the MCU? And it had to be done. I talk about a character that doesn't originate from the comics. Excelsior! Welcome back to another episode of BestoCast. I am your lovely host, that pantsless producer Paul, and in this episode we are talking about Season 2, What If, on the Disney Pluses. I was going to go back and I was going to review What If Season 1 on BestoCast, and apparently I never talked about Season 1 on BestoCast. That was when I was exclusively working with Mr. Lobo on Sleepless Nights podcast. It is over there on his site. If you'd like me to talk about Season 1, please like, comment, subscribe, and tell me below that you would like to hear more about it. Just like, comment, and subscribe overall to help the algorithm find Besto TV. And if you want to help support Besto TV financially, we also have a members area on the YouTube. What If had a Season 2. This is probably by far one of my favorite MCU properties. When I started officially collecting comic books, when I started officially collecting superhero comics, one of the first books that I always attribute to that is always the Wolverine series, a series that I read almost strictly from that point on to probably about 20 years ago when I finally stopped reading, and then just went to synopsises and wikis and whatever. So number one is Wolverine. If I were to pick a second comic series that I would read, it would be What If. I always liked What If as a comic series because you didn't have to strictly follow it issue by issue. So if you missed an issue on the comic stands, it didn't really matter. It kind of stood on its own. Ironically, because it's kind of at the beginning of my comic book collecting, superhero reading era of comics, reading that stuff out of sequence doesn't really it doesn't necessarily have stakes, because it's like I don't necessarily know what they're referencing. However, it does provide, or it did provide a gateway to like, well, maybe I should check out more about this character. I mean, there were some series, there was stuff like I think like What If Wolverine fought Conan, or What If Conan was in modern era. So those didn't really tie to any specific books, so you could kind of read those and it didn't really matter because you didn't have to read like any specific story arc to understand the backstory, versus like what if Dark Phoenix had survived, that you have to read the Dark Phoenix saga to kind of understand what events they're changing. And looking back, is like some of those books that I might have had were like, I did have like the Conan book, Conan in Modern Times, and Wolverine fighting Conan. Or I had comics that maybe I did know a little bit more, like what if Hulk had killed Wolverine, or the glossy metal cover where we had Wolverine's bones laying on top of a tombstone and a dent in his forehead. What if Hulk killed Wolverine in their first face-off? So books like that. But I also think that it also was a gateway to Dark Phoenix Saga, which I did eventually read later on. And I believe even reading it out of context, it didn't really matter. It was just kind of one of those aha moments. Oh, I know what that means now. But I think it also opened the gateway to other books like Danny Ketch's Ghost Rider. It's created some interest in Punisher books, created interest in, I think it would have been like volume 3 of Guardians of the Galaxy, or maybe it was volume 2. Doing this off the cuff, I don't know which volume it is. Maybe the new Guardians team is volume 3, and I'm the one from the 80s is volume 2. I don't. Whatever. Look it up. And I was kind of hoping the same thing when it came to What If the series, where they kind of go off of tangents and do things where they may not have necessarily been able to do in the movies. And kind of sort of series does kind of rely on itself. It's not self-enclosed. It's not like Tales of the Jedi. But even Tales of the Jedi aren't really self-enclosed single stories. They all tie upon themselves, and they just explore the greater narrative of the overall, like Ahsoka timeline. Spoilers. But I will go into spoilers territory. This is more of an overview than a review, so I might have to talk about key points. So I will have to spoil some things, but I'm not going to go into a deep dive blow by blow of what every single episode. I trust that you've watched it, so, and if you didn't watch it, you've been warned. Yeah, this What If series basically leans upon itself. It tells its own narrative, and I don't know how to feel about that. Maybe we get to explore things that we wouldn't necessarily get a movie of. We get the Marvel Zombies. We may never had a hope of getting a Marvel Zombies movie. We spend an episode dedicated to Marvel Zombies. It provides popular enough that they're considering a Marvel Zombies property, so we might get a Marvel Zombies property because of it. I attribute to it. I don't know if it's a fact or not. So this is my opinion, but this is probably why we get Captain Carter in a Doctor Strange movie. It's not necessarily that same Captain Carter. Matter of fact, it can't be that same Captain Carter that's in Doctor Strange. I feel like it's popularized by these what if stories. However, the issue that I kind of have with these what ifs is that they all have to deal with the MCU. They don't really like explore any new kind of concepts or anything because everything has to been already established in the MCU, and it's only ever established up to whichever season comes out. This season of What If goes a little bit further than season 1 of What If because now we have things like Shang-Chi and the Eternals and Thor Ragnarok. So this kind of explores it. But then, like I said, it starts to seed within itself and becomes its own narrative. I guess as a TV series, it's going to have to do that versus, like, say, the comic books. They're going to probably run it dry. I mean, they've already said that maybe it's either season 3 or season 4 is the end of What If. But I kind of feel like that is similar to how the comic books ran, where it's like they only went so far. There was only so many story arcs that they could do. Once it loses popularity, they cancel it. A year or two passes, then they bring it back and they do another series, and then they cancel that one when they start to run dry again. And then maybe another year goes by, and then they start doing one shots instead of like bringing the entire series back. They just do one shots whenever it feels right. I kind of feel like that's how this is going to go. It only can go so far with the MCU, and then it's probably going to get canceled. And then once the wheels get going, and there's more story arcs in the MCU, they'll do more. They'll bring the series back, or they'll do one shots maybe, or whatever. That's how I envision the series, and that's possibly where that can go. It could be possible that it's also following a specific story arc. We set up a story arc in season 1 where we kind of deal with Ultron and we deal with the Guardians of the Multiverse. In this season, we get the Marvel 1602 story arc that happened in the comics, where I think there's an event that happened that leads to it. It might have had to deal with Wanda. But it's basically all the superheroes, but they're in 1602 instead. You get this kind of nice little arc. The comic book did it more justice than What If. You only get a single episode of it, so you get what you get. And of course, it all ties into the whole overall narrative of what If is establishing anyway. They kind of do that. They don't ever really stray from the formula too terribly much. I mean, we get a Christmas episode where we get Happy Hogan as a Hulk. So I guess it's the inevitable naming of Happy Hulk Hogan. Wow. I know there are different colored Hulks they've explored in the comics, but I don't think Happy Hogan ever was a Purple Hulk, and I don't know if Purple Hulk was ever a character that they established. They experimented with, like, there was a Blue Hulk, and of course there's the Green Hulk, Red Hulk. Was there a Purple Hulk? Maybe. I don't know. I don't follow the Hulk story arcs all that much, but there's a possibility. They always seem to lean towards the Green Hulk and Gray Hulk more so than any of the other colors. So they kind of took that idea and established their own version of a colored Hulk in the MCU. It's kind of fun. It's nice. The big thing that everybody's talking about that made it to the news articles, everybody was talking on the socials, is that they invented their own character, a character who did not exist in the comics. This is a breath of fresh air that we get an original character for the MCU that's not that's bogged down by continuity, because that's what comic book fans want to see. They don't want to see representation of comics that they read as kids growing up. They don't want that nostalgia. They want fresh new things that have never been in the comics whatsoever, and new directions. I'm not completely against that mindset. There's a history when they establish new characters or change characters in like media, and then those characters are immediately changed in the comic books. Look at Kamala Khan, who was established as Inhuman because basically Disney and Fox were at war over the X-Men, and Disney, I think, wanted the X-Men back, so they were trying to burn Fox out of stories dealing with the mutants. So they were focusing on changing the status quo from being mutant centric to being Inhumans. We get Kamala with being an Inhuman. Kamala becomes a pretty popular character, and they give her own Disney Plus series, and exactly to mirror the Disney Plus series, she dies and comes back a mutant. Spoilers, but she's now a mutant so that she can match her counterpart on the Disney Pluses. I seem to recall they did something when Tim Burton's Batman came out that they changed the status quo in the comics to kind of reflect the movies. They do it all the time, and I'm not totally against them reinventing characters. But instead of me calling this character, let me get her name. Her name is oh my God, Kahari. I'm gonna go with Kahuri. If I'm wrong, please let me know in the comments that I'm wrong. If I'm right, please let me know in the comments that I'm right. If you don't care either way, please let me know in the comments that you don't care either way. Kahari is a new character. It's an episode that it's all subtitled. If you're not into reading, you're not going to like that episode. From what I understand, it's written in the Native American language of not necessarily, I don't know if it's specifically her people, but it's a Native American language that she's speaking. It's a new character that just exists in the MCU that supposedly has no tiebacks. I would imagine that in a matter of time, if that character is truly popular, that Marvel will probably have her appear in the comics. And there's already talks of her getting her own Disney Plus show. There's already talks about her getting her own MCU movie. But then there's also talks about like Captain Carter getting her own MCU movie, supposedly, or series. I feel like Captain Carter has more to lean into than Kahari. Not that I dislike the character. I don't dislike the character at all. It's fine. It serves its purpose for this story arc. If they're doing these characters tied into just to What If, I wouldn't mind seeing more about that character. My complaint, however, is that there's the rest of us who have been waiting for characters that have been in the comics, who have grown up reading specific characters as a kid, that have never gotten any justice whatsoever, have never gotten anything on camera. If they do get things on camera, they've been very shortchanged. Wolverine. Wolverine. It's just a little bit annoying or baffling where, we'll spend time on a brand new character and still not really do any justice to like any of the other characters that we have. Spider-Man. Spider-Man. I like the episode that she appears in. I like that, spoilers, but she's a part of the resolution of the finale. She serves her purpose in the thing. What if Nebula joined the Nova Corps, which is the first episode, or uses characters that are established, and it kind of expands on the whole Nova Corps, which we don't really ever get. We get a preview of the Nova Corps in Guardians of the Galaxy, and that's about it. They're tossed away in a phrase where it's like Thanos destroyed them to get one of the stones, and the Nova Corps is pretty much gone. It's kind of nice to see what if Nebula joins the Nova Corps. We get a little bit more entailed with them. I believe they teased this in season 1, where Peter Quill as a child, he's found by his father, his powers manifest younger, and that's a really good one. And we get an early preview of a potential Avengers team where we get Goliath, assuming that we're going to see him in like the Thunderbolts or something, but we kind of see more of Goliath. I talked about Happy Hogan. That's the Christmas episode. Fun. What if Iron Man crashed into the Grand Mass ... What is the actual title here? And it's still truncated. The title's too long. And it's an episode where we get, instead of Hulk end up being on Planet Scar and with the Grandmaster, we get Tony Stark instead. This was an episode that was supposed to be in season 1, but they ran out of time, so they didn't do it. And this is where we get the Thanos killer version of Gamora. They didn't have time to finish to do the episode, but that character still was involved in the finale. So I always thought that it was always kind of a neat aspect where we have characters that we haven't seen the stories yet, but are forthcoming. You get Gamora in those 2 episodes in the finale, and then we get to that episode that explains it, and oh my God, this is probably I hate this episode. I don't get this whole thing of like anything revolving around Thor has to be Looney Tunes. I don't get the whole MCU is like, oh, well, we have to make everything crazy and weird. When anything that involves Thor and the Thor characters, they all have to be Looney Tunes and just super crazy. They just have to be crazy lads. They really seal this with the Grandmaster. Like, the Grandmaster was kind of weird and silly, in his own movie. In the season 1 of What If, he was kind of wild and crazy and weird, but we don't get a whole lot of them. Now we get an entire episode featuring the Grandmaster, and I'm not a big fan of the Looney Tunes version. I don't like that road that the MCU is going down. I said this during the Thor Love and Thunder episode. Did I even do a Thor Love and Thunder episode, or am I imagining that? Or did I just complain about it across multiple episodes? Anyway, my point of view was that Marvel should have, if they were going to treat the gods or like the aliens as kind of weird and silly, only because it's just like that's their culture. Like if I were to read a Terry Pratchett book, a Discworld book, that they're kind of weird and silly and stuff, but that's their world that they exist in. It fits and it works. Where I kind of feel like if MCU would have taken a page out of that book, it would probably be okay. Where like, okay, well maybe the gods are a little bit weird and silly because they're out of touch, or the aliens are a little bit weird and silly because their cultures are different, and it's just a misunderstanding. That's okay with me. But in Love and Thunder, everybody was weird and silly. Anyway, everyone all the way down to Jane Foster. We can't even take Jane Foster serious, where she's got to have yucks a minute. They just kind of continue that. You see that in Nebula joins the Nova Corps too. Disney must really love Korg, and they really pin their hat on Korg being the comic relief and being the guy that's just the yucks and the stupidity and the ha-ha-has. But the thing is, the Nova Corps thing kind of works because you kind of have these fringe characters. At this point, they're not going to do anything with Howard the Duck, and they kind of got free reign to do Howard the Duck. So that's kind of fine with him being a wild and silly character. Groot is fine being a wild, silly character. So having Groot, Howard the Duck, Korg, and Meek together as a team, and they're all kind of weird and silly. That's okay. That kind of works. It's small doses and micro doses. But then we got this whole like thing with Iron Man, and it's just, oh my God, everybody's making gags. Tony Stark is trying to be funny. And he's rolling out the quips at a mile a minute. The Grandmaster is just wild and crazy and weird, and it's just I just wanted to fast forward it. What's this have to do with Gamora being a Thanos killer? And to sum it up, it doesn't. It happens in the last 5 seconds of the damn episode. You watch an entire episode for the fabled Gamora the Thanos Slayer, and it's just the last 5 seconds of the episode. You have to sit through somebody's piss poor comic relief for I don't know 45 minutes. Forget it. No. What if Captain Carter fought the Hydra storm? Here's another one that's truncated. Hydra. I hate this because I go and click on it to see why it's truncated, and it's truncated even further. What if Captain Carter fought the Hydra Stomper? This one adds to the overall story arc of the first season. Captain Carter gets the Captain America serum instead, and Captain America ends up in a prototype Iron Man outfit years before Iron Man ever exists. This is kind of like the hallmark of what I like when it comes to what if stories. She's going through kind of the same things that Steve Rogers goes through. Even though she's lost in time and everything, she still kind of like experiences it with any version of Steve. Steve is basically essaying the part of Winter Soldier when it comes to this episode. His mind has been manipulated. You kind of still got this whole like romance story between her and Steve, but you kind of get it in a degree where she still experiences it next to Steve. A version of Steve and a version of her always fall in love. This is the actual like original Steve from World War II that she discovers. I like this story. I like what they do with this. I like that I like. I just like it. Words. Put words here. What if Kahare? We still haven't figured out how to say that word. What if she reshaped the world? This is the episode that's dedicated to her specifically. it's a good episode. I like the character. They're speaking the native language. We have still like Spanish conquistadors. They're still speaking their language and they're subtitled. It's not like where it's like the Native American language is subtitled, but any other foreigner will still speak a version of English, assuming that us, the viewer, are hearing them in their native language. It's automatically translated to English in our ears. It's a setup for the finale, of course. What if Hela found the Ten Rings? Probably one of my most favorite episodes of them all. I might have said that for the last. I think every other one I probably like. Oh, this is my most favorite. No, this one's my most favorite. No, this is my most favorite. I like this. So it does the similar Thor storyline, where instead of Thor getting banished from Asgard by Odin, and then the hammer kind of getting enchanted, it's Hela instead. So she loves death. She loves killing and destroying, but she doesn't appreciate life. Odin banishes her to teach her a lesson and enchants the helmet. Whoever wields this helmet or whatever has an appreciation for life and is the true Hela, something like that. I might be paraphrasing quite a bit. She gets banished to the era of when the Mandarin is a ruler. He's conqueror at this time. This kind of love story between the two of them. He, of course, has the 10 rings. It's one of those stories that I like what ifs to do, where they kind of go over a similar theme and kind of retell it with a different skin. Instead of Thor getting banished to Earth, what if it's Hela? Now we finally told the story of Hela on screen. We finally told the story of Shang-Chi on the screen. Let's do this. I like this story. I really like it. What if Avengers are assembled in 1602? I kind of covered that briefly. We get Captain Carter. She ends up with a version of the Avengers. They are split up into two different factions. There's like some sort of scar or something, and it's abducting their peoples. I wanted to be into this because I like the 1602 comics, but I kind of at this point was like, okay, I'm ready to be done, move on. So I didn't really pay complete attention because reasons. I get it. We're doing the 1602 version of all the Avengers. I get it. They have to come together. Even though they're two factions and they're split apart. We bring back the Happy Hulk Hogan in this bit. So I think Happy Hulk Hogan is here to stay, even though there was absolutely no reason for Happy Hogan to be Hulk in this story. It's just so that we had a reason for the Hulk to fight somebody that was also the Hulk. Hulk can only ever fight Hulk things. Okay, the Hulk is too strong. Nobody can fight the Hulk, even though like Steve Rogers and Iron Man have stood. Well, Iron Man technically was at a loss when he fought the Hulk in Avengers 2. So I guess they could also be foreshadowing or establishing World War Hulk, which in the comics, the Hulk, when you get to like World Breaker Hulk, when he reaches like that status, yet nobody can face the Hulk. There's only one specific person, and that person is broken. I'm not going to spoil that. I will say that for a later episode. Maybe that's the thing that they're doing it. But knowing Disney and the MCU, World War Hulk is probably another in-name only series or movie, so it's hard to say. There are people disappearing and dying, and they can't figure out why. Dum dum dum. It's Doctor Strange Supreme. A little baffled with how this Doctor Strange Supreme operates. He's a character that was in season 1. He's a character that goes down the route of becoming a bad guy. Probably one of my favorites. One of my favorites among all of my favorites of season 1. I just kind of like what they did where he tries to save his girlfriend. I can't remember her name offhand, but he tries to save her, and it doesn't matter what timeline. It always results in the same. So he ends up going down a dark path, and he ends up undoing his own universe, and he's stuck in purgatory until the Watcher brings him out. They have to save the multiverse, and that's when they become the Guardians of the Multiverse. But then when it's done, he goes back to his purgatory. So I don't understand, like, when he's in his purgatory, like, there's supposed to be nothing left. He was able to reach out into the other dimensions and build upon his universe, and he brings Carter back with him to fight other beings. The season finale villain of season 1, What If, was Ultron with the Infinity Stones. He's presenting to Carter is that he's capturing all these, I guess, would be considered in the Marvel Comics Omega or beyond Omega level superpowers. So he's going to all these different multiverses and he's capturing them to prevent any multiverse calamity from ever happening again. And he needs her to help catch one, which happens to be Kahari, Kiko, Kahari, who's been avoiding him. He sends Carter to capture her, and it's revealed that Strange is doing it to reshape his world. He's not capturing just the bad guys, he's capturing the good guys, because if he sends them into a meat grinder, that's not the actual thing, but that's what it seems like. He can siphon off their power somehow, and he's still trying to save Christine. She's fated to die, and he's still trying to change that. So he creates what's called the Forge, which is, like I said, it's just this. He's just going to siphon everybody's powers and try to recreate the world, or his universe rather. You also kind of get across that it's not really Stephen Strange that's in control here. He absorbed a lot of like demonic entities and stuff to do what he did in the first series. These other things are influencing his actions. We end up with Peggy Carter and Kahari teaming up to fight him. It's got this end game bit with Carter where she basically gets everything. She gets the Infinity Stones. She's got Hala's helmet. She's got like the Thor's hammer. It's basically like everything that you end up with. Like, well, it's 10 times more than what you get in Endgame with Captain America, where he just gets Thor's hammer. But she has like everything at her disposal to help defeat Doctor Strange. Stephen Strange himself kind of, realizes what's happening, and he's trying to stop the demonic entities, but he's a man possessed. Long story short, she succeeds. A universe with Christina is created where she survives, but Doctor Strange does not exist. So it's just this kind of like happy-go-lucky ending. You're hinted at more adventures with Captain Carter. Here's a little spoilers if you have not watched season 2 of Loki. Quick spoiler on that one is that you get the Loki Tree of Life at the end. You're basically cued in that Carter is going to be touring the multiverse. Overall, I love season 2. I think that's probably the best thing that Disney Plus puts out anymore. It's something that's they put a little bit more thought into it, but then it's like they only have to put 45 minutes of thought into an episode. They don't have to drag it out to 10 episodes apiece, 450 minutes of content when they only have to do 45 minutes of content. It's a well thought out series. They've kind of made this announcement that they might end it with either season 3 or season 4, which people were kind of upset with. But again, like I said earlier, I understand that. I get that. If you agree with me, let me know in the comments below. If you disagree with me, let me know in the comments below. If you're indifferent, let me know in the comments below. But please like, share, subscribe. It helps us with the algorithm. It helps the show get discovered. It helps out in all ways. And if you have the means of wanting to back Best OTE financially, we have a members only area where you can join in and you can be a part of the discussion. Hopefully influence episodes directly. Members only chat if you want to talk to me directly. I kind of want to lean into this more so than say a Patreon or some of the other things. It gets to be too much when you have like all these other places to go. It's all housed in the members area. If you're able to back us, please back us and help us grow and expand. That's it for Besto Cast, and I will see you in the next episode. Have a good one.